Okay, so the talks tonight are on dissatisfaction. And it seems to be a human condition to be dissatisfied with life. But it's not necessarily a requirement. We like things to be different. And the problem with wanting things to be different is quite often we addictively demand that they be different. And the moment we put a little bit of pressure behind wanting things to be different, we create suffering in ourselves. And no matter who you are, things are going to go wrong. And from time to time, things are going to happen that you'd rather not happen. It's just the way it is. And you can suffer incredibly as a result of your resistance to what is, or you can learn to accept what is and not suffer. And so the teaching's pretty simple, really. It's just that most people resist. Most people fight it. Their resistance, their fighting what is, just doesn't change what is. It just creates suffering in them, which is unnecessary. So a long time ago I learnt this. A long time ago I learnt that being a victim of life, resisting what is, addictively demanding anything, is going to cause suffering in me. So I didn't. I stopped. And then I got to watch for the last 43 years or 44 years, got to watch people suffering incredibly because they didn't like what is and they resisted what is. They suffered accordingly. It usually didn't change anything except they suffered. And to me this was a form of insanity, because we don't have to suffer, we don't have to resist. It doesn't mean that we can't move to change, but we can move to change from a place of acceptance rather than a place of resistance. And so I watch people get really lousy, walk around in moods because they want things to be different than how they are. And this mood, this feeling lousy, well, making yourself feel lousy, is just not a requirement. It doesn't need to happen. It's a choice. Well, it's a choice when you become conscious enough. If you're conscious enough, you don't resist life because you're not into your own suffering. Buddhism is about higher consciousness. How conscious are you? If you're producing suffering for yourself through resisting life, you may need to look at your consciousness levels. Because it's not going to get any better, it may not get worse, but it's not going to get any better. Things are going to go wrong. Things aren't going to work out for you the way that you would like. Things are going to happen that you'd really rather didn't happen, or you wish would happen. Your resistance is going to dictate whether you have a nice life or not. You watch people who get caught in drama. They're very much in resistance. Something terrible's happening. Quite often it's all made up. There's actually nothing happening. And so they involve other people in it to make it seem realer when there's nothing happening. And they suffer, which makes it seem realer. And you look at them suffering, and if you're unconscious enough, you'll fall into the dream that they're in, that something is happening, and somehow their resistance is real, and that their suffering is warranted, but it's not. There's no need to create resistance to life. We can move through life without resistance and still be effective as a human being, still change things if we want to, from the place of openness, acceptance, rather than resistance to life. We don't have to get angry every time things don't go our way, which is massive resistance when you look at it, massive amount of suffering, which is quite often inflicted on someone else as well. There's no joy in that, that's for sure. So I was very lucky to learn this when I was a teenager. And so I would say that, relatively speaking, my life hasn't been that discontented because I understand acceptance and I've practiced acceptance rather than practiced resistance. And for me it's a choice. It was a choice. It was an obvious choice. Am I going to create suffering for myself or am I not? Is that suffering, if I create it, going to change anything or is it not? My observation is it doesn't change anything. You just suffer for no reason. And so it's up to you how you live your life. You're going to create your reality by the way you think about it and how you act. You can create heaven or you can create hell by the way you think, how you operate in the world. You are totally 100% responsible. Because you don't have to resist. You don't have to suffer. You can be okay with what is. It's a choice. So for 10 years in my 20s and early 30s I ran a publishing company and I had 35 staff members, and it amazed me how many of them could suffer for such long periods of time. And I would tell them, I'd say, hey, you don't need, this is just how life is. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. There's no point suffering about it. That doesn't help. Then maybe you've lost something. Now you're creating suffering. Now you're continuing the loss. You're creating more loss. And there's no advantage in that. But most people, they'll fight you for their suffering. They'll fight you for their resistance. They won't let go of their victimness. They insist on suffering. They insist on being in bad moods. And I think it's because they're not very conscious. Because if you're conscious, you just don't do that. So the game is really higher consciousness. Can you be conscious enough not to get caught in resisting life? Can you be conscious enough to accept life as it is, still make a difference in life, still move to change if you want to? A lot of people think that if you don't get upset, don't resist, don't go into some kind of mood, that you're not going to be effective, you're not going to be able to change things. My experience says that's simply not true. That's a lie that people tell themselves to justify usually their immaturity. Because when we turn ourselves into a victim of what is, of life, whatever it is, this is not a mature act. When we're blaming the world, this is an immature act. So in maturity, we don't resist life, we stay cool. And we make it work for ourselves and whoever else is involved in it, in whatever's going down. This is maturity. And it's a choice. You get to choose. Heaven or hell.